And now I'm live, I think. Yeah. This is the EUS show number 30. We're doing this, well, why I say we when I'm the only one in here right now. The show's being done on the 28th of January of 2017. Jeff's here right now. I'm waiting to see if Matt is around to be on, because one beef that I'm going to start in right now is Google Plus changed again and decided, oh, we don't want you to IM people on Google Plus. We want you to make it difficult for communication. So evidently, for me to communicate with him now, I have to send him Twitter messages. And whether or not he'll get them or not is another story, because it was a lot easier when it was with Google, and now with Twitter, it's a lot harder. So we're going to see if he is going to be around, because he has been quite busy. And of course, we didn't do a show last week because of conflicting times and me being too tired to do anything. But there was a lot of weather, unfortunately. We had a fairly nasty tornado outbreak last weekend that we may discuss if Matt is to come in here. We had a snowstorm. Ooh, I have snow on the ground again. A whole half-inch. Ooh. Except northern Iowa has about a foot of snow on the ground, and I only have a half an inch. And I didn't even have to go and shovel it, because that bright thing came out and melted it all on my driveway, so I didn't even have to go shovel. It's like, oh, yay! And we've had, I think, 4 snowstorms since I moved to my house, and I've only shoveled twice. Notably, we're nearing the end of January. I've only shoveled twice. That's sad. But I'm going to go and check to see if Matthew is sending me anything on the Google Plus crap thing that's here, and it's a piece of junk. He might be watching this for all I know. He may not be. I don't know. Oh, great. Now that's public. Oh, great. People will be watching. This is kind of creepy. But so that happened. Now, when I was mentioning about this big bright thing known as the sun, it's because it seems like this entire month has just been clouds or fog, which is pretty much clouds. But I'm saying it's either been overcast or it's been foggy. And the sun came out yesterday, and it was bright, and it was wonderful, and it melted my driveway, so I didn't have to do it. And then what happens today? The clouds came back, and it started snowing again lightly, kind of like this, what I call the snow globe effect, kind of like a few light flurries flying around, nothing, just kind of like, ooh, pretty. Not overly like travel concerns or whatnot. It's just kind of like the floating flurries around. Nothing to really get all worked up over. But it's just miserable, and it's been cloudy, and everybody, and in my case, it's been just like depressing seeing it cloudy. At least when it was cloudy and foggy, it was warmer. Now it's colder. It's in the 20s now instead of being near 40, and now it's just it's like, I don't like this. If it's going to be cloudy, I'd rather it be 40 than cloudy and be 25 or something. But there's not much going to happen. I'm going to see if Matthew. I don't have any stupid Google Plus. Why do they have to change? Well, we got to make things better. Make things better, my butt. More like make things worse. No, I don't want to go to that. Yeah, it's called, this is going to be a show where I'm going to just talk about how to. Now my thing is on 2 things. Oh, good grief. So this will be fun. Well, I don't see any messages, so I might be doing the show by myself. Ooh, yay. I know Matt's been busy of late, so I don't blame him if he isn't around to do the show, or the communication is bad because we can't get a hold of each other. But in the last couple of weeks, well, a lot of stuff has happened besides the president changing, but we had a pretty bad tornado outbreak that unfortunately killed people again. Which was sad. There was, excuse me, I'm yawning because of the clouds, because clouds make me not only kind of blah, but it kind of makes me depressed. It makes me depressed to a point that it's like it's like cloudy and it's like, but it also makes me a bit more tired because I've had decent sleep, but just clouds just make me, it just feels like you need to go to bed or something like that. So if I yawn, that's why. And the fact that I ate like a little bit beforehand, not a whole lot of food, but just a little bit. But we had a tornado outbreak. It was gosh, what was it? Saturday, Sunday of last week. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Or Saturday, Sunday. Whichever. There was, as of the last count that I saw, in the entire event, I think it was Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday morning. Because the last few tornadoes the last tornado that I knew of was in the suburbs of Miami, near Hialeah, somewhere in that area, which did a little bit of damage. And that was, it's like 4:30, about 4 a.m. in the morning on Monday was the last one. But the tornado that everybody's talked about from that event was the Albany, Georgia tornado that was on the ground for 70 miles. It was an EF3, and it killed 4 people. And they're still cleaning up, so they've been doing a lot of stuff for that down there. So, excuse me. Jeez. But this is where I'm going to get into this event a little bit, is that I was watching, luckily, I didn't watch any of the coverage live because I was fairly busy last weekend. I was kind of like, especially on Sunday, I wasn't even home on Sunday. So, because that's when the Albany tornado occurred, there was 2 big events that occurred in southern Georgia. The Albany tornado was on Sunday afternoon. There was another tornado that morning, like overnight, Saturday night into Sunday, that hit a town that I cannot remember offhand, but everybody would know what I'm talking about. Oh, Adel, Georgia is ringing a bell, and I think that's it. And it's in the same area. I think Adel's further to the east, closer to 75, Interstate 75. And the Albany tornado was really bad. And I watched the coverage of the afternoon event. And now I'm yawning again. Excuse me. I remember, tired, clouds, sad, depressed. Bleh. But I was watching the coverage, which surprisingly enough, now it seems like everybody puts coverage on YouTube. Or people watch the coverage and then tape it to put it on YouTube so people can watch it, even if it's good or bad or whatnot. And this one YouTube video, which I watched, and this is what I do. People that have watched this show or Polygon, the other show before, have always known me as a person who loves to then make dinner, come into my living room, now that I live in a house, come into my living room, turn on my laptop, and watch 5 or 6 hours of severe weather coverage on YouTube. Even if it's old, I will sit down and watch it and get myself glued to watching severe weather coverage on YouTube for 5 or 6 hours. I am that nuts because I always want to learn how people do it in other markets and how it's done in other markets, comparatively speaking to how it's done here, or how I used to do it with Henry when we were still doing the network way back about a little over several months ago, when I was still doing it at the time when we did severe weather coverage, Henry and I, when we were still both at the network, which we no longer are. But I watched this coverage, and it jumps around because this person jumped from one station to another. Although they kind of screw it's chronologically sort of in order, and then it's not sort of in order, and then it jumps really badly. So it's so people are going to get confused watching it straight through. It needs to be edited a little bit better, but I think that's half the problem. Is I saw it that night. I think it was Sunday night, early Monday morning when I watched it. Or it might have been Monday night. I don't remember. I think it was Monday night when I watched it. So it probably wasn't edited to its full extent. As I still wait to see if Matthew, also known as Matthew, wants to be on. This is what happens when we don't have communication anymore. We can't tell if that's another thing. I can't tell if he's even on. So this makes it doubly difficult to find out if he's on or not. Oops. Whoa. Whoa. I didn't want that. Sorry. So back to me acting nuts. So I watched this coverage. It began with the coverage from Albany, Georgia. It was WALB, Channel 10, which is a Raycom station. A station, I might add, and I'll make a snide remark, I've tried to get guests on from that station before. Yeah, I still have. So I watched that, and I would consider their coverage, given the fact that Albany, Georgia is a small market. Their coverage was fairly good. I think based on the fact they're owned by Raycom helps, because Raycom doesn't dilly-dally with stuff. They're really good at what they do. So their coverage, what could have been maybe slightly better, I would probably give it maybe about I'd say given the small market and whatnot, I'd give it a B+. It was really good, really informative. They didn't dilly-dally around. But the problem was they kind of showed radar too much, and they kind of especially in small markets, you don't have a sky cam. I mean, you can't have them like a lot of these places, like even up here my market, where it's like sky cams everywhere and everybody can see everything. And a lot of small stations, of course, in small markets, they can't afford it. But if they had a sky cam, now the station in question, Channel 10 in Albany, is on the north side of town. Tornado hit the south side. There would have maybe been a likelihood that if they had a sky cam near their station, they would have seen it. Probably. The thing that was interesting about that part of the coverage, the one from Albany, was that it was really windy and they could hear it. And it was like really nasty, and it sounded horrible to the point that they were about to take cover. And then it all of a sudden quit really quickly, and it got dead quiet. And they said that on the air, and that was kind of like eerie. And I think it sounded like they were a bit frightened as to what was going on, because it all of a sudden got really quiet. The thunder went away, the lightning, it stopped raining. It was very eerie. But then it started raining again, like lightly later, according to them. And it's like, and the first thing I thought of was, that seems very eerie. It's like roaring, big storm outside, and then all of a sudden it just quits. And then it's dead calm. And I started getting a little somewhat goose pimply listening to that and watching it, because it was kind of like they were almost to the point of going under under desks and whatnot, even though the tornado was south of them. But they weren't sure, because you never know with radar, because radar, the beam you're looking up, especially in Albany, Georgia, they're done by the weather. They're done. They're done. They're done. Their CWA is with their warnings from in Albany are from the Weather Service in Tallahassee. So the radar is not that low. It's still fair. It's close, but not. You're not going to get a decent view, but not great. So when they say the rotation is here, well, you never can tell. It's somewhere in that area. So they thought that maybe the storm was telling them that they were a little closer than they realized, but the rotation the radar was seeing it correctly. It was in the right spot, but they kind of felt a little bit kind of creeped out. But after that, the coverage kind of moved to Macon, to WMAZ, which is channel 13, which is a believe it's a Tegna station. Yes, I think it's a Tegna station. And I've tried to get people on from that station, including the chief who I was watching, which was Ben Jones, who's been there for about 20 years, roughly. And he was loose and kind of like, and there's like a big tornado coming that's deadly and is already killed. And he was, I'm not saying he was like, oh, here's a tornado. No, it was like, he wasn't being overly serious without being funny or whatnot. They tended, everybody was like, it was like everybody took their suits off. They were all wearing just dress shirts. And I'm not saying they're all just wearing dress shirts, but they weren't wearing their suits. All of them. Him and all the other weather meteorologists that were there, which was kind of a bit strange. It made it look like they were all, it looked a little strange to me. I mean, I can understand that, but it just looked a little bit odd. Just it just look. I'm not going to show these videos because I don't want to get in trouble. But it just looked strange to me when they were doing coverage, and I always the coverage given that it's a Tegna station, I believe. And let me go and look, because so wait a minute, just bear with me. I don't want to act stupid and like, oh, it's not a station. What are you thinking? What are you on? Okay. Yep, I was right. Yeah, it's owned by Tegna. But, oops, that's not what I want. So I would say theirs was really, okay, I don't know what that was. I'm looking at my Twitter feed because I'm hoping Matt's going to message me, and he hasn't. So anyway, I'm going to make sure the messages even got through. Okay. Anyway. So, but their coverage was that their coverage, I would say, was really good because you saw him and you saw him with the radar, which was slightly better than in Albany, where it was just like, it was kind of a little bit too much radar, too much radar. Whereas at least with at channel 13, WMAZ, they were actually showing themselves kind of being serious without being like stern about it. So I would say their coverage was probably an A to an A minus, because yet again, even though with Macon's Market, the tornado ended in Macon's Market in southern Wilcox County. Yes, it hit Wilcox County, Georgia. Yes, I knew that that was the case, and maybe that'll get me to have Ben Jones on this program, but I highly doubt it, because I don't think Tegna allows their weather people to talk to people like me or Matt or anybody else. That's not my fault. Anyway, but they were talking with people. They would get people on the phone, and they're like, hey, there's a tornado and we have damage here and blah, and all this stuff, and there's power out. So I'd say A to A minus, mainly because it's not an A plus, because they kind of, and I would even mention this too, and this drove me nuts when I started watching Albany's coverage. They would refuse to show, and I was screaming at it, at this stupid YouTube video, where is the velocity? They're like, well, here's this rotation, and I'm looking at reflectivity. Well, I can't see the rotation, and how is people supposed to know there's a tornado if you're not going to show the reflectivity? Or if you're going to show the reflectivity and not the velocity. It took them until the tornado was almost on top of the south top part of Albany before they showed velocity. That's why they get a B. For use of radar, they get about a C minus on that. But their overall was B for Albany. B minus, B roughly. But Macon, I'd say, was an A to an A minus. From Channel 13 that was in this video. And then later on, we saw some coverage from Savannah, Georgia, from WTOC, Channel 11, which is owned also by Raycom. I couldn't tell what was going on with theirs. Theirs was so odd. It made it just felt odd. To me, if it just was like screaming, I would watch it and go, huh? And what? Because it was very confusing. It was, I would say it was, the presentation was probably on par with Macon, but it was kind of a bit lopsided, where it was almost like they were trying to fill time, even though there weren't tornado warnings, and then there were, and it's almost like they were trying to fill time in when there was nothing going on. But they were very poignant about discussing what was going on. So it was almost to the point when they needed to be to the point. So I would give them probably a B to a B minus, because their coverage from what I was watching on this YouTube video seemed to be a bit all over the place. And the reason that they get a high mark, they showed sky cams, hint, hint, hint. And they showed them lots of times, which is a big plus, because people do not like, and it's been mentioned with spam. We always use it on this show and on Polygon. Radar is pretty much a bucket of spilled paint to people, because they think the dark red area, or whichever color you use, is where the tornado will be, and that's never usually the case. So, unfortunately, that they get higher marks for the radar, or for using sky cams often, including showing stuff and even showing some features and whatnot. But the presentation was kind of a little bit all over. It was kind of a little hard. And then it gets that their coverage got weirder when, because they're a CBS affiliate, and this was on Sunday. What did CBS show last Sunday? The AFC Championship game between Pittsburgh and New England. So what do? The pregame has started, and they were going to go to the pregame because there was no tornado warnings. And then abruptly, right before pregame was supposed to start, tornado warnings were issued. So they stayed with the coverage. And then eventually they went to a double box where you saw the pregame in one box and their coverage in another. And I'm thinking, does anybody care if they miss pregame? I was like, huh? And then, and what was worse is during the same event, there were TV stations that were more or less saying that the football games were more important than people's lives. Luckily, those stations were not on this YouTube video, but I heard that came via a tweet from Keith Murphy, who works at Channel 13 in Des Moines. And I don't know where he was, but I'm thinking that seems rather a bit kind of not good, not great, but I mean, but anyway, then finally in this video, we're finally getting to the end of this. We get to the coverage from WESH or WESH TV, which is Channel 2, the Hearst station in Orlando. Now, finally, we get to a station where I've actually had somebody on before. This is Tony Monalfi's station. He was on Polygon about 2 years ago. And in fact, he wouldn't be able to be on again because I found out Hearst won't let me have people on anymore. So I had him. He probably got in trouble for being on my show. Anyway, their coverage. Oh, my goodness. And I'm not going, oh, my goodness, bad. I'm going, oh, my goodness, good. Except this is where I had a problem with theirs. They had too many cameras. This is half the problem. They had too many cameras. It's like, here's a camera, here's a camera. They went back and forth from cameras too many times to the point that I started losing track of where these cameras actually were. Because they would say, this camera is from Volusia County, and this camera is from Orange County, and this camera is in a car driving down the road. And the first thing I thought of is, there's a bunch of tornado warnings, and they had a bunch. And they have their people driving down the roads in tornado warnings. That for me was setting a bad precedent about saying, oh, their people are out on the roads. I'm going to go drive too. That's the only bad thing I saw from their coverage. Their coverage, they did intermix it with radar, with Tony getting very, very stern about the thing, showing the radar, showing the velocity, and then intermixing that with pictures from video or live feeds from somewhere close to there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very well done. And very concerning, and they were like, here's the storm, it's heading toward here, and being there and doing this stuff and all this stuff. And the interesting thing about it was they have not confirmed one tornado from Central Florida. Not one. And there was a lot of tornado warnings. And when I was looking at that coverage from Channel 2 in Orlando, I'm actually surprised there wasn't a tornado in at least a few of them, because some of them were very pronounced, especially between Orlando and Daytona Beach. There was some at least that should have been tornadoes, but probably were straight line wind. But it surprised me a little bit with that. Now, whether that's changed if there having been any tornadoes in Central Florida since, as of the time that I last looked, which was, I think, yesterday afternoon or early today, I think it was early today I looked in, that it surprised me that they didn't find any. Now, by this point, they probably would have found it, because this has been over almost a week now. So, but that's somewhat surprised me that they didn't find any, at least as of this point. Especially around Oviedo, east of Orlando, was one place that had really good rotation. There was one just near, Geneva, Florida, I think is one town that I heard. There was one near Daytona Beach that was really good. Good as in had really good rotation. But I think the problem was the fact that in Florida, it's really hard to get tornadoes some of the time, especially when you have an ocean, and the ocean tends to stabilize the air a little bit, especially if the ocean temperature is not warm like summertime. So, I mean, the storms looked very serious. I mean, they were supercells that were rotating fairly vigorously. I mean, if you'd put the radar from Melbourne or Tampa Bay and taken those storms and put them in like Mississippi or Alabama instead of Central Florida, those storms probably would have produced tornadoes, and probably long chalked ones. Instead, according to the Weather Service, they produced nothing. So the coverage was great, but the storms just did not produce anything, which it was a bit odd. It's probably going to be something that will probably need to be looked at, probably a research project for why do storms look, me and my yawning again. Why do storms look really good in Florida and not produce tornadoes, and the same type of storms could look the same in Alabama or Mississippi and produce deadly tornadoes? I think, of course, everybody will say there's a difference between January in Florida and April in Alabama, which of course there is. I'm just specifying the look of the storms, not the atmospheric conditions, because remember, these storms moved through Central Florida after dark. It was after 7 o'clock. It was about between 6:30 and 8:30 when it was after sunset, after about 6 o'clock when they started becoming vigorous. About 7 was when they really started becoming vigorous and whatnot. So that's what was going on with the storm, with that coverage from Channel 2 in Orlando from WESH. Their coverage, I would say, is A+, except the only downside was too many cameras and people having their crews driving around in seemingly what people would probably think were dangerous areas. That's the only down thing, like I had mentioned before. So anyway, and I haven't heard anything from Matthew, so I will take the assumption that Matthew is not going to be on because he's probably not home. Guess what I'm going to be doing after I'm done with this show? Probably going toward Matt's house to see if he is home, and then I'm going to yell at him. Just kidding, but maybe I will, and then maybe I won't. So that was the end of the coverage because nothing else happened. Well, except early the next morning, there were a few tornadoes near Miami. And I wasn't watching coverage then. I wasn't up for that. Although I probably was, but I don't think I was. Yeah, I was, because I was about ready to go to bed when they issued the tornado warning for the possible tornado near Hialeah. So I was up for that, but I went to sleep right after that. So, and that one they did confirm a weak tornado. So, but the coverage of that day, and then there was, of course, the storms the night before on that Saturday, the 21st, that were unfortunately deadly again. So there's been a lot of fatalities again with the tornadoes that occurred or last weekend, I should say. And in the meantime, we had a winter weather event up here. We had a small ice storm that was going to, I don't even remember when it was. It was probably 2 weeks ago. It was about 2 weeks ago. We were going to have an ice storm. Now, it materialized that we had a little bit, but it wasn't a big deal. But we did then have a snowstorm a few days ago that affected northern Iowa with about a foot of snow, especially north central and northwest Iowa. Here we were kind of in the mix area where it started as rain. It kept flipping between rain, sleet, and snow and ice pellets. It finally, and this is how crazy the forecast was. The Weather Service forecast said it was going to rain. It snowed. Then they said it's going to snow. Then it rained. And then they said it was going to end as snow, and it didn't even snow that time. I mean, the temperatures were so close to a level that instead of rain, if the temperature had been 1 degree warmer, we would have had rain. Instead, it was 1 degree colder. We had snow. I mean, you can't fault them. It's this borderline gray area type event where it was very difficult. So, I mean, we were only expected to get about 1 inch of snow. We only got a half. So they were pretty much bang on about where the heavy snow was supposed to be. And it wasn't supposed to be where I'm at, which it wasn't. I mean, you look outside right now. I drove around because I was in Cedar Rapids today. You could drive around. The roads are fine. The side roads are fine. The gravel roads are a disaster area right now. And this is where I'm going to get into this, because this was a couple of days ago. And I'm going to make sure that anyway, excuse me. Because I drove around on a gravel road in my Volkswagen. Yeah, me and my Volkswagen driving on a gravel road. Yeah, that doesn't sound good. I washed it afterwards, so except then it didn't get all the dirt, so I'm still pissed off. So I'm still mad. Anyway. Excuse me. The gravel roads, this was on a night when it was at night, so I'm really stupid. The temperature was just above freezing. The gravel road was mush, pretty much. I might as well have been on a dirt road or on a Class B road, which for those that may not know what a Class B road is, it's pretty much a dirt road. Anyway, so my car's yucky and dirty, and of course I washed it. But a lot of the gravel roads have frozen, but then started to unfreeze as we had so many days of warm temperatures. They started to unfreeze, and we'd had so much rain. And of course, the rain doesn't just run, all it's going to be able to do is run off. But it got onto the gravel, and it kind of turned it into a little bit of ice, and it still is that now. And then we had the snow on top of it. So a lot of the gravel roads now are just, they're okay to drive on as long as you drive slow, but they're not going to be like really like you can drive like 80 miles an hour on a gravel road. And I've never done that, so don't think I have. But so yeah, it's been kind of okay with the weather around here. It's just been kind of, like I said at the beginning of the show, really dull with clouds and fog, and now it's clouds and flurries, and it's like, and then there's more clouds, and it's like how many days can you have where it's cloudy? It's like I could have, if I was still doing the Weather Network, I'd just say it's cloudy. And then I'd be wrong because it wouldn't be cloudy. Maybe I should say it'll be cloudy and it'll be sunny. So, anyway. Excuse me. So, outside of anything else, not much else. There's not really anything that's coming up. No big storm system, at least for the next several days. I mean, I'm going to quickly check. First, I'm going to check first to see if I've gotten anything new. And I gotta erase that. So go to that, and I go to that, and I go to this. Oh yeah, that the net one thing too that I forgot I was going to mention. I mentioned the Go 16 released their first pictures, and they look awesome. We'll probably discuss that further in an episode later when it starts to become when they figure out where it's going to be put into operation. But I am yawning again. Before I look at this, I'm going to look at them. I'm looking at models right now, so I'm looking at the GFS. I really don't see any cold pushes. I see sometimes where it might get cold, but not overly so. So that's not a big deal. Winter weather. Let me make sure there's some. There could be some interesting weather in February. Interesting thing is how much snow they say is going to fall in the next 3 days, and it's probably about a half an inch. It's more or less with all the flurries we've been having of late. So really in the next about week to 2 weeks, I don't see anything big. I don't see anything cold. So right now it looks like here in Iowa, it looks like it's going to stay average. It's not looking like it's going to get really warm either. It's going to stay pretty much in a temperature range for highs between about 25 and 35 and lows roughly between about 15 and 20, probably about 15 and 22. That's nothing. It pretty much just looks boring. So at this point, since Matt's not here and we can't discuss anything else, or I can't discuss much of anything else because there's nothing much else to discuss. So I will leave it there at this point, and hopefully I will try and scrounge up Matt for another show sometime in the future, maybe next week. We'll see. But I'll get it out because my mouth's starting to get dry because it's one thing about me trying to talk for almost 45 minutes now. So anyway, I'll be back. Gonna try and get Matt back on too. We'll see you in the next time. So have a good week, and hopefully you will be back with us on our next show. Goodbye. Oopsie. I'm going to stop now. Goodbye.